remember a few years ago, there was a Super Bowl commercial showing these two consultants making their pitch to the big honcho. Next scene, you see them walking out of the building and one leans over to the other and says, "Can you believe it? He actually wanted us to implement." Well, that kind of leads into my definition of what a consultant is. You see, they know 50 ways to make love, but they don't have a lover. And the classic example here with these two individuals is you got to learn how to, sometimes it's crawl, walk, run, versus trying to run right away.
Hello, and welcome to Valuability, a video and audio podcast for financial professionals, business owners, and anyone interested in financial planning, business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Danforth Fleak, and I am joined by my longtime friend and business Yoda, Philip Simensen. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the 5 levels of mastery and what it takes to reach the top, the pinnacle or apex of the mastery pyramid. Now, this particular topic is a little bit of an inside joke between Philip and myself, as this was one of the things that he taught me when we first became friends back in the mid-90s. So every now and then when a mastery topic will come up, one of us will toss out to the other, "Hey, have I shared with you the 5 levels of mastery?" So we're very excited to share this with you this week. Many individuals never reach mastery. Our goal is to explore each of the levels so that you can understand how you can apply it in your career, practice, or company. You can find all of our episodes, both video and audio versions, on the website at value-ability.com. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can subscribe to our channel and click the bell to be notified of new episodes. Also, if you enjoy this video, please take a second and give it a like. It really does help us out. We would also love to hear from you, either by commenting on our YouTube video, or you can find and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at value_ability. Now, as I mentioned, this particular topic has a specific meaning for Philip and my friendship. A worker of mine, when I was a manager, got taught by me the 5 levels of mastery, and during that process of teaching him, I happened to mention Philip's name a number of times, and as our friendship has extended beyond that manager-employee relationship, this friend of mine now constantly refers to Philip as Philly 5 levels. So it has extended beyond to mythical status within my group of friends. So Philip, why was the 5 levels of mastery one of the things that you started out? I mean, it literally maybe the first thing that you ever taught me back when we first met.
Well, as we'll soon go through those 5 levels, one of the things what I found, by using the 5 levels of mastery in the pyramid as a tool to illustrate the 5 levels, if you do that at the beginning with your employees, it demonstrates a couple different things. One, it says, mastery is going to take a long time here, right, and that's okay. 2, it demonstrates to your new employee the leadership style that you're going to be providing. And as the viewers will soon hear too, it's okay if you happen to make a mistake, to ask for help in particular.
Right.
So that's why I'd like to do that at the beginning to demonstrate the type of culture they're going to be entering, and the type of leader they're going to be in leadership they're going to be receiving from me.
Yeah, that honestly was a huge part of my development. Coming out of a pretty strict family. My dad was a military officer. Went to boarding school, which was no longer military at the time, but still had a very rigid system hierarchy. And so I had come out of pretty strict hierarchical structures as a kid, and I was terrified of making mistakes. It really was one of the big things that I learned working for you initially, and your business partner as well, that if I made a mistake, that I didn't have to hide it or run from it, to just focus on it and figure it out, understand why it happened, and then try to not let it happen again.
Yeah, excellent. And why don't we, now that we've kind of teed this up, let's talk about the 5 levels of mastery. And before I begin with the first level...
Have I shared the 5 levels with you before? Had to do it, sorry.
Just if you had to, absolutely. People, I'd like you to think about a pyramid. Visualize a pyramid. Or take a piece of paper right now and a pen and draw out a pyramid. Then, at the base level, just go up a little bit, draw a line going across. Actually, as you go up the pyramid to get to the apex, draw 4 lines. Now, at the base of that pyramid is the first level of mastery. And the first level of mastery is just do as you're told. And the reason for that is that, as a follower or your people... they don't know what they don't know yet. And so the style of leadership, particularly, is going to be, as Dan said, military is great at this, and it's going to be directing. And it's going to be one-way communication, and that one-way communication is going to be coming from the leader. And that's okay, because, again, the follower doesn't know what he or she doesn't know. So there's no sense to give big explanations about it. Save the time. Because what we'll also describe here as the follower at this level, they're unconscious, incompetent. Now, go up the next level. At this level, this is what we call the second level of mastery. And in the second level of mastery, you do as you're told, then identify gaps. Now the follower, the individuals, now they know what they don't know, or they're becoming conscious incompetent. Now, the style of the leadership here, particularly in the communication style, is explain, show, do. So it's more of a coaching role or the guide. The first level of mastery, as I said before, it's more of a directing, but it's really specifically, it's a tell. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. Then I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Then you're going to do it. Now, the next level of mastery, that third level, is do as you're told, identify gaps, and seek help. The reason why most people never obtain mastery is that last piece in there, seek help. And particularly that is the case if they're in such an environment where, mistakes are not forgiven. And what you want to make sure you do here, and because it's the thing that inhibits people from taking that risk of seeking help, is their pride or being seen as a failure. So your role as the leader here is to support them and let them know it is okay to fail here. But come back to me and ask for help, and then we'll gather and fill in the gaps so you can now become efficient and more effective at doing the task.
I'm going to say that's really interesting, Si, from the standpoint that, even though I came out of, pretty hierarchical environments as I entered the working world, I still was a person that had a hard time doing things if I didn't understand the why behind it.
Right,
and I think more and more, you said 20, 30, 40 years ago, most job environments were just ended at do as you're told, right? and
absolutely.
There wasn't a lot of room for someone getting that why. And workers today, and I think this is a good thing, they do want to understand the why, but at a certain point in their mastery, having the why doesn't really help necessarily. Whereas when you explain the levels of mastery, it kind of gives them a framework for understanding, hey, at a certain point, you're going to be able to understand the why. Like, correct. Just hang in there, right? So now I think maybe I understand why you started with the 5 levels with me.
Because, with that 3rd level, now you become what I would say, and is you've gained some experience, you've had some successes, but you still might be but occasionally you're being blocked, and so you got to seek the help to fill in the gaps, to make sure you become again more efficient and more effective at the task, so that you can then reach the 4th level. And the 4th level now is you're consciously competent, and now you can teach it. You've had enough successful experiences of doing that task, so you can now come up with your own solutions. And that pinnacle now, the top part, and that part now is you can teach it. That's all you have to think about that. At the very apex or the pinnacle of that pyramid here, now you can teach it. What the problem is with a lot of our society today is that people cannot live with delayed gratification. And as I started off with that Super Bowl commercial, they wanted to flip the pyramid and visualize that. Now the pyramid is trying to stand on the apex. It's pretty flip floppy, and it's going to tip over. You might get a couple short-term real quick wins, but it isn't going to be sustainable.
Right, and that's the fake it till you make it approach, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And you can be sure what goes around comes around. If you're working in a larger organization, all right, you can survive a little bit longer. But eventually, the Peter Principle, whatever, it's going to catch up to you.
Right. Well, in small businesses too, you could move on to other customers, but other clients, but you're probably going to lose those first clients when they figure out that you don't really have the mastery that you say you do.
Yep. That's right. Now, let's talking about that mastery. Mastery has been around medieval times, the Renaissance, in the Renaissance, up till today. To become a master electrician, it takes 12,000 hours of supervision by another master electrician. Then you must have 2 years as a journeyman. Then once that's completed, you got to pass the exam. Then you can become a master electrician. So mastery of anything is going to take time.
It's really interesting, too. I was just actually watching a documentary about electrical line workers who started working with the electrical grid back in the 20s and 30s as they were starting to build these, super high voltage transmission lines. And their story, it just popped into my mind, is very much the 5 levels, but when they didn't know what they didn't know, they learned on the job, is what the documentary said. Right. But when they made a mistake, they died. So it's the ultimate furnace or crucible of mastery. Yeah,
that definitely is the final
right
nail in the coffin. But kind of reminds me of that old saying, and then if you're going to be stupid, you better be strong. Right. And stupid is optional.
Right.
So, and just I want to go back here and put it in context. If it's 12,000 hours, well, if there's 2,000 working hours in a year, that's about 6 years.
Yeah.
If you're just doing the 8-hour days. So it takes time. And Dan, if you could now, I'd like you to pull up the master pyramid so our viewers can visualize it.
Sure.
And I want to share a couple insights. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in the first 2 levels of mastery here, The leader's role is going to be, first and foremost, specify the task and then assess the individual's readiness level to do the task. But in assessing the readiness level of doing the task, we're going to look at things a little bit differently in how we define that. We're going to look at ability and we're going to look at motivation. And underneath ability, I want you to think of the acronym TRUE. And under that motivation, we're going to think of WISC. Now, for the individual to be high in ability, because I don't want to screw up potential with ability. So to be high in ability, you got to have all four of these components with this acronym TRUE must be high. Example, T equals training. Have they been trained on the task before? R equals role perception. Do you accept these tasks as part of your job? The leader owns role perception, not the follower. The best time to control role perception is in the selection process. That's when you should be describing, here's what the daily tasks, weekly tasks, the monthly tasks are in this position that you're looking to take. Then the leader's got to make sure that in looking at the resume and questions they use during the interviewing process that they've demonstrated ability at a lot of these tasks. They're probably not going to be high in ability on all the tasks. If they were, they wouldn't want this job more than likely.
Right.
Because most people want to grow and they want to learn. But if but then what you want to make sure you do here is explain that role, the roles during the selection process. Because where you have failed them, if 6 months from now and these people come to you and say, this isn't what I signed up for, they aren't letting you down as much as you're letting them down, because you probably did not control the role perception up front during that interview process and that selection process. But then the R, that's the T and the R. The U now is understand what to say and how to say it. And then the E, recent, relevant, successful experience. The operative words here are recent, relevant, and successful.
Right.
For, again, the individual to be high in ability, all four of those components must be high. So therefore, in the first two levels of mastery, the leader owns the task. And that's why we're going to tell you what your first level, tell you, show you, and then you're going to do it. Explain, leader will do that. Show, leader will do that. Then they're going to do it. But then ultimately, then you got to look at the motivation side. And the motivation side is what I'm going to describe using the acronym WISC. Willingness. Now, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. This is where the psychology, and that's the self-talk, you're going to have to figure out in between the ears of the individual, because sometimes that's they have what I call these limiting beliefs, and that are impeding them from willing to do the task. Then, of course, it's incentive. Well, you tie the incentive to promotion, pay raises, or you won't be having me look over your shoulder anymore. So you have more freedom and autonomy. Then the security is the degree of security. Is there a high degree of risk or a low degree of risk in doing this job? So how secure are you with the risk level? Then C is confidence. How confident are you doing the job?
Right.
And doing it successfully. And the first time to get them to do it on their own, flying solo, their confidence will be, I would suggest to you, is primarily the thing that's going to be low.
Right.
And ultimately, the leader, your role, as I look back at my successes and my failures, is, what predominantly, if I look at what was good and what was bad, all came down to the people I was surrounded by. And and then I learned, in reflection of that, my role then is to make sure I make my people ultimately self-sufficient so they can do the task. That way we all win. And I would suggest to you that's no different than raising your children. You want to make sure you raise your children so they have a healthy self-esteem, self-confidence, so they can go off and be independent and not codependent upon you. And ultimately, you want them to be not necessarily takers of society, but they're givers, and they're giving forward.
I would say for me, in my experience, I would just echo that the confidence was the number one thing that varied the most in that equation. I think about the first time that I went out in the field as a product wholesaler. I had huge willingness. There was a big incentive, monetary. It was my first opportunity to prove myself in that role. I was pretty secure because I had joined a smaller organization that was growing, and I was in a territory that nobody else really wanted. And but confidence in that first year was the thing that flip-flopped back and forth, and my manager was a newer manager, and at times it would just batter my confidence without realizing it. And of course I would eventually get to the point where I would have to tell him, hey, I'm pretty low. And as soon as I would tell him that, he would click on and build me back up. And as soon as my confidence was back up, man, I was back on the street. I was out there calling people, hitting all my appointments, making all my calls. But when that confidence was down, I would say the phone is really heavy.
Absolutely. And there's another reason why you want to share this language with with your people immediately upon hire, because you're going to share a common language. And then by sharing that common language, it's going to save a lot of time. The follower or the individual will tell the leader how they have to be led if the leader's willing to listen. Right. And this just allows for a common language to be shared. It's a great point. Dan, I remember you kind of led into it earlier, but after sharing these 5 levels of mastery the very first time in 1996, you put up an iconic figure on you took and actually printed it off, and some, I think it's a lot of people would even know the saying of this iconic figure. Do you care? Right. And you put it on your door. Do you care? And then I saw it, and then it moved to right on your desk, so you saw it every day. Do you mind sharing that?
No, not at all. And I did allude to it a little bit in our introductions. Yeah, it's Yoda. Try not, do or do not. There is no try. That is one of the things that I really kind of loved those movies growing up. A big science fiction fan, and with the things that I learned from you early in my career, I can't even remember how it popped up, but I did print off a Yoda. I had a T-shirt actually with Yoda on it. But yeah, it is really a piece of thousands-year-old philosophy, right? That it's that confidence. It's you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. I've been watching, big documentary watcher, so I'll reference documentaries all the time. Watching a documentary about the Navy SEALs, and their selection process is all based on confidence, right? You say it's not always the biggest guys, or actually they say it's never the biggest guys. It's not the strongest guys. It's the guys that want it and the ones that stick it out. So yeah, Yoda has been a longtime icon in my business philosophy.
Yeah, very good. It's not the size of the dog; it's the fight in the dog.
Right. So that's actually a great place to wrap up. In the comments below, let us know about a time where you were in the first level of mastery and you had a funny or interesting experience where you identified a gap and started to move into that second phase of mastery. Now, if you're interested in learning about the services that Philip and I provide through our consulting firm, Faire Savoir Consulting, you can check us out at fsconsultingltd.com. The Valuability homepage is located on that site, but you can also get there directly at value-ability.com. If you have questions or topics which you would like us to cover in an upcoming episode, we would really enjoy hearing from you. You can comment on this video at YouTube or contact us through our Twitter or Instagram accounts, which are both @value_ability. And please, if you enjoyed this video, do us a huge favor and give it a like.
Dan, let me leave with some final thoughts on mastery. And the first one is, just note there's going to be periods where you're going to plateau, and that's okay. That is very normal. Then there could be also some times which you are going to regress. And that usually occurs when you've experienced some failures. And that's going to shake your confidence and security level. But knowing that these insights, the solution here is, what's naturally going to happen is you're going to feel frustrated in either of those two scenarios. And frustration, that leads to usually the emotion is you're feeling blocked. And what I would recommend that you do is you go seek help. And seek help from someone who you know who's mastered this specific task, so you can identify what they're doing differently and then be able to apply it. Then, success, as you think about success leads its greatest failure is pride. Pride cometh before the fall, as they say. And failure's greatest success leads to humility and learning. And I'd like to say, if you're not learning and if you're not growing, then you're dying. So every day you should be growing and learning.
Awesome, Philip. It's always a pleasure to learn a little bit, grow with you, and of course, review those 5 levels of mastery. So until next week, we will talk to you then.